Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Tyria Talk. My name is Richie, and this show is all about the mind-blowing upcoming MMO, Guild Wars 2. Now, before we get into today's topic, I just want to say that ArenaNet has been a little tight-lipped of late, and they have not really revealed too much information over the past few weeks. We expect that to change within the next month or so, different conventions coming up. We think they're going to announce the next and final profession for the game shortly, Mesmer, and we also think, we also know that they have said that there will be a closed beta before the end of the year, so we expect some sort of announcements like that before the end of the year. But until then, I will continue to deliver information as much as I can about the game. Today's topic in episode number 11 is crafting. Yes, we will go over all of the different crafting goodies, so fasten your seat belts. In Guild Wars 2, you get to choose from 8 different crafting disciplines. The first is weaponsmithing, where you can make fabulous swords, axes, and hammers. The next is the huntsman, who can make bows, pistols, torches, and war horns. And then there's the artificer, for those of you who like to cast spells and create staves and scepters. Wingardium Leviosa. Next up are the armorsmiths, who can make heavy armors for your big tough guys. And then you have leatherworkers, for the medium armor folk who like to hunt things, kill them, and put those dead things on their bodies. Then you have tailoring for the light-armored spellcastery sorts. The jewel crafters will make fabulous necklaces and rings. The final profession is cooking, for those who like to make tender little morsels to temporarily buff you and your companions. So there you have it, the 8 crafting disciplines in Guild Wars 2. Now, each one of them will progress from a skill level of 0 up to 400, and you can have 2 active of these disciplines at once on your character. Now, if you think way back to old school MMOs, crafting used to be an absolute brutal process. Not only were the materials like impossible to find, but there was a chance that when you were crafting an item that it could fail completely, and not only would you not get the item you were trying to make, you would waste all those materials. Now, more recently, MMOs have been more forgiving on this, and you will always get the item that you're trying to craft. But the leveling process, skilling up in your profession, still had a chance to fail. So, for example, you could try to craft this sword or the shield, and you were trying to get skill ups so that you can advance your crafting discipline. And what would happen, though, you would always get the item. You would never waste the materials in that sense, but you maybe not get a skill up. So you would still get that item, but you would waste the materials because you were looking for skill points. Guild Wars 2, you're not going to have that problem. They every single time you make an item, and this is kind of how a lot of MMOs have started to do it. I think Rift's crafting is like this, and so is Lord of the Rings Online, where you make an item, you always get the item, and you always get experience points towards your next level in the trade skill. So that's a great change. You know, you don't want it to be too unforgiving. Now, I already mentioned that you can have 2 active professions at any one time. So what exactly does that mean? So out of the 8, you choose 2 of them for your character, and you can level up and learn different recipes and different things like that. At any point, though, you can go to a master craftsman, and you can actually switch your active professions to 2 different ones. And what happens is it will save all of the recipes that you've already unlocked for the profession that you're leaving, and it also saves the progress that you've made. So you don't actually lose anything by doing so. Now, it costs a certain amount of gold, and it's said to increase the cost of how much it takes to swap professions based on how high or how proficient you are in the skill that you're going to. So if you're going to switch to a skill that you've never done before, it's probably pretty cheap. But if you want to switch back to a skill that's already at max level, it's probably pretty expensive. But the bottom line is you're free to choose. You're free to go back and forth between a lot of different professions. In other MMOs, they don't normally do this. They allow you to switch professions in a lot of cases. I keep saying professions, but professions is the name for classes in Guild Wars 2, and this is crafting disciplines. So they allow you to change crafting disciplines in other games, but when you do so, you lose all the progress that you've made leveling that crafting discipline, and you also lose any recipes that you might have learned. They don't do that in Guild Wars 2. Now, these other MMOs aren't including that. I just said aren't 3 times. Aren't. The other MMOs aren't doing that to you in order to try to penalize you or make it unfun. There's implications to that design choice, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out in Guild Wars 2, to be completely honest. There's 3 things I can think of that it will have an impact, having that kind of flexibility. One is obviously the economy. At the beginning, players are going to be just experiencing the world and getting used to their characters, and they're probably going to stick to just 2 main professions or whatever. But down the line, a year into the game, 2 years into the game, you're going to have characters that have all of the professions maxed on their one character. And that makes them a little bit more self-sufficient. So that means that they wouldn't be looking to other players as much to kind of craft their items. So the economy is going to be impacted by this. The other thing is, if everyone can craft all the different things just by switching their professions, you're going to see a greater supply and maybe a less of a demand. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact it has on the economy. Another thing that it'll impact is your reliance on others. A lot of times in guilds and other MMOs, you kind of want to make sure you have a good complement of all the different skill discipline, the crafting disciplines, so that, okay, what are you? I'm a leather worker. Oh, okay, that's great because I'm an armor smith and blah blah blah. So you want to have all the bases covered. Well, you don't really need that anymore in Guild Wars 2 because a lot of characters can be self-sufficient. Now, it's not necessarily a problem, but it's just something to notice in a social game where you kind of want to encourage interaction with other players. This doesn't necessarily encourage interaction with other players. It doesn't necessarily hinder it, but again, something to note. Third of all, I could see for completionists like myself that you kind of feel obligated almost to actually go ahead and level all of your different professions. I mean, I love achievements. I love those kind of things. Some people could care less, and I understand that. I'm talking about me personally. I will feel, maybe not right away, but as the game advances and we're 6 months down the road, I will feel an obligation to go and max all of my professions on my character. So instead of just limiting it to 2, where it's like, okay, well, I've maxed these 2 and now I can move on, I'm going to feel obligated to go down all the thing. Again, not a bad thing. It's another aspect of Guild Wars to kind of explore, but, it depends on how it feels. If it feels kind of grindy and professions are a little bit difficult, then, we'll see what kind of impact it has. Now, I just want to clarify before I get all flamed for all kinds of posts. I'm commenting on the design choices because the design choices that they make will have an impact, all right? ArenaNet is making bold design choices all up and down this MMO. This is another choice that they're making, and I'm discussing possible ramifications of it. I'm not saying it's horrible. I'm not saying it's great. We're going to have to wait and see, but here's some things that I've just been thinking of, so be nice. Okay, so now let's talk about how you discover new recipes in Guild Wars 2. They're basically said there's 3 ways that you can discover a new recipe. Some of them you just automatically know as you advance through the different levels of the discipline. So as you get better, as you improve your skill, you will just unlock some recipes automatically. And then there's going to be very, very rare cases where you will find a recipe that's sold on a karma vendor or maybe dropped from a monster in an obscure place. They said that's going to be the extreme minority of cases. Most of them can just be discovered by trial and error and trying to figure out what the different recipe combinations are in the game. I've seen a bunch of videos on how this works, and it just looks like you have all your crafting materials on your window, and you go to a crafting table, and you select one of your items, and you put it in a little box, and it will actually display there are 2 hidden recipes unknown for this item. And then you can kind of hunt and peck and try different combinations with that item and try to figure out a new recipe. All right, and if you figure one out, you can make it, and then your character will know that recipe from their point forward. Now, I will say that just watching these videos, I'm not overly enthusiastic myself personally to just hunt and peck and try all these different combinations. It seemed a little bit tedious to me. That's just me. However, I don't see it as a harmful addition to the game. The reality is, months down the line, you're going to have lists on websites, on fan sites, of all the recipes that people have found. Even these rare ones that you have to buy off a vendor or whatnot, they're going to be available on the internet for those who choose to go down that method. So if you don't want to take part in this little mini game where you're trying to figure out things and that doesn't float your boat, okay, then get off your high horse. It doesn't hurt you. Just go look it up, and there, you can kind of craft your stuff. If there are going to be some people that love that little kind of experience, and they're going to want to figure it out without having the other websites do it. And like I said, I don't think that's a harmful addition for the people that want that. So at the same time, they're making it kind of this open thing where anybody can kind of just look things up and have at the recipes. And at the same time, there's something for people who are just really into crafting. The good news is you're not going to have recipes that are just rare and you actually have to right-click on an item in order to learn it. The recipes are it's just that. Once you know the recipe, you can, if somebody tells you the recipe, you can figure it out yourself too. So there's not going to be like a grind for, I really need this really uber awesome, weapon pattern that only drops on Ooglok, the slime slucker, and I have to wait and try to kill him, and maybe it'll drop, and maybe it won't, or I'll never make my item, and I'm going to go cry in my coffee. That won't happen. I promise. That's never happened in the history of life, and probably will never happen. So, good news all around. They also said that they want to limit the number of trash items that you're making when you're going through your leveling up process for your various crafting disciplines. So they said that they don't want to make you make 20 bronze swords in order to figure out how to make an iron sword. If you're making a bronze sword, you just switch a couple of components around. You could probably discover the recipe for the iron sword, and they don't want to have to make you make several of those items or many of those items in order to get to the next level of your crafting discipline. What they said was, if you're basically crafting items that are level appropriate for you that you can use right now, and you stay at that pace the whole game, just as you level up and get more powerful, and you're making gear that's appropriate for your level, then you'll level all the way to maximum level in those items. Just by doing that. Now, if you switch professions and start at level 1, then obviously it's going to feel a little bit more of a grind because you're not making stuff that you can wear right now. But they did say they don't want you making the same item over and over and over and over again just to get skill ups. So we'll see how that goes once the system is fully implemented. The final thing to mention, which I love about it, is crafting items in Guild Wars 2 is going to be on the same power level as some of the best items you can get in the game. It'll just have a unique look to it. So if you're a guy who's just running the explorable modes of dungeons and you're getting the unique set armors for doing that, that's great. That's you're going to look a certain way because you love doing dungeons. But if you're not into running dungeons and you love the crafting system, well, then you're going to have gear that's equivalent in power, but yours is going to look distinct because you craft. And I just think that's a great system all around. People are going to have different looks depending on what they're into, and overall, people can get the same powered items depending on whatever they want to do in the game. They play the game how you want to play the game. It's kind of like the Burger King of MMOs. I'm sure they would love to hear me say that. Anyway, that's going to wrap up today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments field below. And click on the subscribe link. I don't know where I'm going to put it, but there's a subscribe link somewhere floating right now. Please click it so that you can be notified when future videos are released. You can also find me on Twitter, www.twitter.com/RichieProcopio. I muse about the gaming industry as a whole, not just Guild Wars 2 on there. You can also find me on Google+. You can look me up at gplus.to/RichieProcopio. And if you are watching me on GuildWars2Live.com, hello! And if not, then go check out that website because it's really cool. All right, that's going to be it this time. Thanks again. See you next week.